DGFirst Management Committee meeting on Tuesday, 25th of November 2014 at 2 p.m. in the council offices. First thing on the agenda is Sederunt and apologies.
Good afternoon. I have 8 members present and apologies from Councillor Mail and Councillor McCutcheon. Councillor Crothers is not present, but he may be along in a moment.
Thanks very much. Are there any declarations of interest? Yeah, before we move on, I'd like to remind people that this meeting will be recorded and it will be open to the public to scrutinise later on. Next item of agenda is the minute of the meeting of 30th of September. Is that a true record? Okay, thank you. And we're going to item 4, which is the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report 2014-15 for the period ended 30th of September 2014. The department is predicting a small underspend of £12,000 as shown in table at paragraph 3.2. Key issues are discussed at paragraphs 3.3 to 3.8 and the overall agreed savings targets will be met. You should see on appendix 2. Anything to add to the report?
No, Chair. I'm happy with the report as presented.
Members, any questions? Ivor?
Chair, with regard to 3.4, the main areas of budget pressure are the waste collection service. I think in a report to one of the other committees there was additional council tax coming in because of more houses, etc. being built. How much does the average, say, 200 houses a year cost us, and do we get reimbursed that money from the council tax that's collected or the general pot?
Caroline, you got an answer for that?
It does help if I use the. I should by now know which button to press. I do beg your pardon. Basically, at the moment, there is no specific provision for additional houses. They're just included in the routes. Obviously, the budget pressure identified here is not to do with new houses so much as the commercial waste collection, which has been affected by the zero waste legislation. Obviously, I think there's a strong case that if there gets to the point where we've got so many houses that we need to put on additional crews or things, we should be then going back to central finance. But so far, we've managed to accommodate the domestic collection.
Well, you add anything? George?
Thanks, Chair. Maybe a bit of a daft laddie question. Who's actually responsible for the maintenance of the outside of DG1 at the moment? Because I happened to walk up past there a couple of days ago and again this morning, and the outside, what I would class as the front door, the entrance door, is in a terrible state of neglect. There's a tree growing out of the rowan above the door. I know the place is closed, but I don't see that that's any reason for not maintaining the property around about it. I'm just wondering who was actually responsible.
I think that would be community customer services, because it's a DG1 sport and leisure facility. I think we'll take a note of that, George, and pass it on to CCS to get if that's okay with you. Any other questions? Brian?
Thanks, Chair. I take note that there's an underspend in services commissioned by social work services, but I also understand that there's a parallel service provided directly by DGFirst in terms of, for example, grass cutting at private homes or around homes. And I was wondering if the council tax register was actually checked in relation to qualification for that service provision.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Collins, I'm assuming that this is in relation to the garden maintenance scheme that is offered up to residents. If that is the question, the answer is yes. Applicants apply to ourselves and through the council, and goes through the criteria checks with our colleagues in finance to ensure that the person is eligible, and there is a finite number that we can take onto that list. So in relation to a person's eligibility, the simple answer is yes, there are checks done to ensure that a person can be entitled.
Stephen?
Thank you. It was just on the relationship between DGFirst and education for the delivery of school meals, and I was just wondering if there's any more detail on how that relationship works in terms of serving school meals in the school, and what the sort of reciprocal arrangement would be for that.
Thanks, Chair. In relation to the two, I think it has to be said they work exceptionally well together. Alan Moss and his team works closely with Gillian Brightson in the Education Department over the school meal provision, and that's clearly been picked up with the recent figures about the school uptake and the quality of food provision that goes from it. So there is a very close relationship under the commissioning and delivery model, and I think it's an exemplar of that process that Furton Priest and Galloway, that these two services do both strive to have the end aim being equal and to provide quality and good service to the schools.
Do you want to come back now?
Thank you, Chair. So just sort of by way of an example, perhaps, like if DGFirst is delivering the school meals, is there I mean, who would the responsibility lie with, say, to make sure the equipment was appropriate in the schools, etc., for ensuring that service was delivered? And how is that accounted for, basically?
The provision of the equipment within the kitchens sits within DGFirst. So the appliances, the cooking equipment, etc., ovens is within DGFirst, and that would be our responsibility to maintain and provide accordingly.
Craig, then Ivor.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to 3.8, it mentions in the text there that we're expected to have a 13,000 increase in the fines that the community safety officers have dished out over the period, and it does give an explanation as to part of the reasoning for that. But I just wondered, could we have a sort of quick description of that? Is it generally because of fines on dog fouling or fly tipping, or are there other fines that are brought into the community safety team? And in the final outturn report at the end of the year, would that be broken down so that members can see what the various fines were for?
Through you, Chair. Yes, I'm sure we can give a detailed breakdown within the end of year report in relation to the specific fines. The makeup of the fines is obviously dog fouling, fly tipping, car parking, etc. So that's the broad spectrum of the fines within the remit of the community safety, but we can certainly bring that into to members at the end of the year.
Marion? Okay, Marion.
Sorry, Chair, it's nothing. It was just to give my apologies for being late. It was a bit chaotic coming in.
Ivor?
Craig stole half of my question. The other one was, what are video badges? Missed that.
Video badges, Chair, are small devices that the community wardens have on them to allow the recording of the interventions and working in conjunction with the public, so that it removes the difficulties or potential difficulties of what has been said during that process. So it's common practice across a lot of the community safety teams across Scotland to utilise these badges, and it just mitigates the misunderstandings and clearer response to any incidents or issues.
Colin?
Thank you, Chair. Just on that point, just a matter of interest, did you have to actually warn people they're being recorded?
Chair, I believe we do, but I'll certainly find that out. My apologies that I don't know that one, but I would assume, yes, there would be some statement made, but I'll certainly clarify that.
Is that the same point, Craig? Yeah. Okay. Any further questions? Can we then go to the recommendations then? 2.1, members are asked to note that based on the position at the end of September 2014, DGFirst is projected to underspend by £12,000 as reflected in Appendix 1. That DGFirst are currently progressing a range of measures to ensure the avoidance of any budget overspend in the current financial year. And 2.3, the progress against the delivery of the agreed savings applied to 2014-15 DGFirst budget as detailed in Appendix 2. Thank you. We should also add in there that at the end of the year report we give the breakdown of the fines that Councillor Peacock was talking about. Okay, moving on to item 5 then, Trading Operations Monitor Report 2014-15 for the period ending 30th September. The department is currently predicting a surplus of 49,000, slightly more than predicted in September, and the key issues are discussed at paragraphs 3.3 to 3.8. Do you want to add anything to that? Yeah. Caroline, you need anything? Members open for questions? Colin?
Thank you, Chair. Who is actually responsible for road sign cleaning and inspection? Because driving around, you see an awful lot of road signs that are green, bold, whatever. And to me, it doesn't look a good advert for the region. It's quite frequent you pass by them. A lot of them are on the main trunk road, I know that, but there are also in towns, etc. I just wondered who's responsible for inspecting and maintaining.
Through you, Chair. Not specifically a trading item. The local roads offices look after the local road network, and they will identify within the provision of the available budget for sign cleaning and washing, and some of that may well get picked up in some of the discussions later on in the report with aids to movement. They will identify areas that require cleaning, and there will be a programme. Sometimes, due to the restrictions on the budget, we can't get around all of them, but we'll certainly endeavour to get most of them, and we tend to do that at least once a year on that basis. In relation to the trunk roads, Scotland Transerve, who we operate and work for, we have a cyclical agreed programme with them, which is contractual with them, that we are currently in the process of cleaning road signs, and there's a lot of work ongoing just now on night shift to clear gullies and sign clean across the network, predominantly on the A75 at this time, but that is built into the contractual programme they have with them.
Brian?
Just on the back of that, thanks, Chair. What's the time frame for the replacement of road signs that have collapsed when they're rusted through at the base as happens? What's the sort of time frame for that to be put right?
Through you again, Chair. We would endeavour to do that as quickly as possible, Councillor Collins. Some of it comes down to when it's picked up. If it's reported through to a local office, the local office will inspect, and if they have them in stock, they will endeavour to have these put up. If it's a regulatory or a warning sign, very quickly. Some of the directional signs that have to be ordered, there's a lead-in period of time to get that. But again, the notification, there's two ways of doing it. It depends if that is advised or picked up through a survey or the regular safety inspections, which fall into different categories, monthlies, etc. Or if it's been passed into ourselves by either an elected member or a member of the community. But as soon as we have that notification, we will certainly endeavour to do that. On the trunk roads, as soon as we have any notifications, we will advise Scotland Transerve, and they will give us an instruction. So on the trunk road network, it would certainly be down to them to instruct us as part of our contractual arrangements with them to go forward and re-erect that sign.
Thank you. The reason that the question is prompted is that there's been a collapse of a road sign stanchion at the junction of the 712 and 713, and it's been lying there for around a fortnight. Again, it doesn't look good.
Okay, Ronnie's taking over that to have a look at. Councillor Hislop?
It's at the bottom of paragraph 3.5. It says once the monitoring tool is put in place for the costing, it is expected that once fully operational, it should result in the removal of this deficit. Is that the removal of the 70,000 deficit, or is that in future years we won't have a deficit in that roads maintenance?
Right.
Through you, Chair, yes. My interpretation is that that is the case. We wouldn't have the deficit. But I'll just ask Caroline just to confirm.
Yes, I can confirm. In effect, the costing tool is designed so that we recover our costs. Now, obviously, there's always unexpected things that can happen, but by and large, it will be designed to fully recover the costs without over-recovering, so that we can achieve a kind of fairly balanced budget in the roads contracting side. Obviously, that's for our internal work. If we make a profit on our external contracting, all to the well and good. So there may still be a surplus in the roads, but it won't be on the internal stuff. It'll only be on the external. And I'm surely we're hoping we don't have loss on the external stuff. I'm sure we won't.
Will I come back, Ivor?
So does that mean by the end of the year we'll have an additional 119,000 surplus rather than 49 because the tool's in place, or is it future years that it'll come in place?
I really, now that it's taken so long to kind of fully implement it, I think we would be expecting it to be more for future years. Although I am expecting that 70,000 to be slightly lower. The latest monitoring shows that's reduced to about 45,000. So it's going in the right direction.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. It's on a similar point, just in 3.5 in the new costing tool, and just to do with how we're addressing changes in direct costs, etc. Does the costing tool, does that sit in line with the corporate procurement processes that we're now using? And just on a second point, actually, I think I've raised this at a previous committee, but on page 13 on the table in Appendix 1, the far right-hand side in the bottom table, the under overspend expenditure or under over recovery income, and then if you look down the list, it just refers to decreased and increased activity, which is, I'm not sure how best to interpret that given the title at the head of the table. But just if you could answer the first question, that'd be great.
Caroline?
Yes, the costing tool is merely a methodology for allocating the costs internally. So it's basically looking at our depot wage costs, etc., making sure that we know we capture them all and then translate those into a unit cost. So in that respect, they're in line with allocation methods that SIP approved for kind of central support costs and other things. So in terms of procurement, the procurement side is I think I'll pass that to Ronnie. Sorry.
Okay, right.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, the model that was developed covers all the elements, as Caroline says, overheads, on costs, labour costs, and that allows the ability to take the council's procurement processes into the cost of the service. We use procurement to ensure that we are complying with those procurement base to ensure that we cover all the costs correctly and there is no issues. So, simple terms, yes, it falls in line with the procurement and the standard.
Ryan?
Thanks, Chair. In relation to the vehicle maintenance, and it was alluded to earlier in respect of outside contracts, whilst we're looking at a surplus, and certainly we would be expecting a surplus to come from the fulfilment of external contracts, what happens to that surplus and how is that surplus viewed in relation to maintenance, upkeep and replacement of equipment that's used to fulfil those external contracts.
And I'll start, and I'm sure Caroline can. The surplus is returned to the council at the end of the year. All the money goes into one pot, and any surplus is returned back to the council. Vehicle maintenance has been on a bit of a journey, obviously, since the departure of the Fire and Rescue Service, and has made great strides into restructuring, revamping itself to take account of that downturn in business. In relation to the maintenance, I think, as we've had previous presentations to our committee here, vehicle maintenance service probably is the best, one of the best, if not the best, council-operated service across the whole of Scotland. Certainly has got some of the best facilities there to do it, and it has been recognised by other organisations that it is a good place to come and to have their vehicles maintained. We certainly work closely with our colleagues in Fleet who do the procurement. We don't manage the vehicle replacements, but we work with our colleagues in Fleet to ensure that the vehicles that are obtained are appropriate and that tie in with the type of vehicles and the equipment that we have in the workshop for maintenance. So it's very much a collaborative approach that when a vehicle is up for replacement, the dialogue between the fleet as the operator and O licence holder consults with the delivery partner to ensure that that vehicle is suitable. But again, it comes back to the previous point from Councillor over the procurement. The procurement of those vehicles is done through national procurement frameworks to ensure that the best prices got.
Fine.
Thank you. Sorry, I maybe wasn't clear in the way I formed the question, Ronnie. My fault. But I'm speaking with regard to four-poster ramps or the equipment required to actually carry out the work, particularly on the external contracts and the maintenance replacement, which is eventually going to be the case in all instances, naturally. So what I would look to would be some consideration of the surplus or part of the surplus being targeted at precisely that, because we don't want to see, but we want to be able as a council to distinguish between the maintenance work that we do and the profit that we make on the external contracts.
Yes, totally agree, Councillor. Obviously, inward investment in the service would be beneficial. A lot of these things we have in operational leases because of the type of equipment. So we do bid in for capital replacement to upgrade this equipment. What we've currently got within the workshops is all in generally very good condition to allow us to continue going. But if there is a need for this, with our finance colleagues, we certainly ensure that the appropriate equipment is there and it's funded appropriately from within the pot. If that comes from surplus, we would certainly look towards utilising the resources as best we could.
I'm not taking a great deal of comfort at this point in time in respect of members being able to distinguish whether or not a profit is being made in fulfilling the external contracts by carrying out works on those vehicles and the wear and tear that naturally brings about on the equipment and its therefore need for replacement in due course. How do we distinguish between the benefit of that equipment and what it brings to the council fleet, and in tandem with the benefit of attracting outside contracts and fulfilling those and the wear and tear that brings about, and how that balance can be struck and how that clarity can be identified by elected members that the outside contracts are in effect beneficial and profitable. and not costing more than we are actually seeing as a result of the contract and the need naturally to replace the equipment, regardless of how good it might be just now and how new it might be just now. The use of that equipment, fair wear and tear, is something that every business has to take into account, because in due course, repairs, maintenance and or replacement is eventually going to come down the line at some point in time. And my problem is how we distinguish between the benefit of the external contracts in relation to the costs that are expended in terms of maintenance, replacement, repair of the equipment that's been used to fulfil those.
Right?
To you, Chair, I think one of the simple ways of portraying is that if we did not have the external activity, the cost of the workshops and the overall cost of the service to maintain the council's fleet would be considerably more. To break down the cost of the wear and tear of each piece of equipment based around whether it's private work or whatever would be somewhat challenging. But in any business process, this is down to scales of economy to reduce the overall cost to our council. We need to have external income to return a break even or to make surplus. So without that external income, the cost to our council's fleet would be considerably more, because the unit cost of maintaining a van or a truck would be more. Likewise, the return from all those costs go to balance the operating costs of the workshop. So it's down to as simple as that. Without it, our cost would be greater. With it, it makes and spreads the cost more evenly and practically across all the council's fleet.
Thanks very much, Ronnie. I do understand, and I understand also that any contract that DGFirst might take on board for external work of that nature would be costed against the profit that would be needed to be reflected in carrying out that work. I also recognise where the benefit comes from insofar as the maintenance of the council fleet are concerned. But if we are simply turning round and saying DGFirst in terms of vehicle maintenance is showing a surplus, nowhere does it reflect that that surplus is being evidenced as a result of the benefits that may accrue or may not from the external contracts that we're carrying out. I just wonder how members might get comfort out of that distinguishment in how the facts are presented to us.
Caroline, I wonder if you can come in and help with this.
Just, you know, we were talking at the outset about the surplus going to the central pot. Well, the very fact that the surplus is going to the central pot is indicative of the fact that there's no breakdown and no evidence base that we see in front of us that determines that there is a surplus, that there is an overall benefit forthcoming from the fulfilment of these external contracts, and all the expense of maintenance, repair and replacement of equipment as and when required is being met.
We have done an exercise to identify those costs that are directly attributable to the external element. Now, obviously, that doesn't apportion some of the overhead, and that would include the repairs on equipment, because in effect, the same equipment is being used for both places, and you cannot very easily divide how much usage. We could certainly, at the next committee, provide an analysis of the contribution to the fixed cost that each of the external contracts In aggregate, obviously, we wouldn't be able to do it per contract, but by contract type, we could provide that, which at least will give you an assurance that in terms of their contribution to those costs that would be incurred anyway, all the external contracts we have make a contribution to those overheads. I think there might be one small building cleaning contract that failed to produce its return, but I think that was due to the building being the Theatre Royal being closed for a few months. But that's about the only one I can think of that doesn't actually make a contribution to overhead. The rest of them do, and we could put that into the next.
Would you be happy with that, Brian? Any other members? Okay, then back to the recommendations. Member asked to note that based on the first 6 months expenditure, the trading operation is currently projected to return a surplus of £48,937. Going to item 6 then, it's the Director's 6 monthly assessment of DGFirst business plan performance. Overall, the Director's assessment is that DGFirst is delivering the objectives set out in the business plan. It's pleasing to see that EMES performance has improved significantly. Appendix 1 contains a summary performance with exception reports, Appendix 2 and 3, and the report also contains health and safety information, Appendix 4, and it's good to see a reduction in number of incidents. Do you want to add anything to that?
No, Chair, report that.
Members? Ivor?
Thank you, Chair. It's with relation to page 26. It's the percentage of complaint responses containing upheld or partially upheld outcomes. We're slightly above where we would like to be. We have, however, performing improvement actions, etc. But how can we tell if there's a complaint came in as a committee? How do we tell that actually we have had a learning outcome from that complaint and we're now implementing it? Because we don't know what the complaints were. We don't know if there are repeat complaints coming in all the time, and therefore we're not actually picking up learning points. That would be good to know. 88% in April showed that we had a problem with one service where there is an issue, and the 43% is because we've actually learnt from April that we need to improve something. We're now down to 43%. But it says it might just be the number of complaints that come in. You've got 10 this month to the next, and then you've got a difference in numbers. But it's just how are we actually able to tell as a committee that we've picked up learning points?
Thanks for that. I mean, obviously, strategically audit and risk, we'll get a report on complaints and how they're handled, but internally with DGFirst.
Thank you, Chair. This one is clearly in relation to stage 1s to stage 2s. And you're absolutely right. It's to ensure consistency of approach is one of the key elements in this process. And it's the number of, what I call it, the overturns of a stage 1 as it goes into a stage 2 that is the reason. And we've clearly, through our business team within DGFirst, are putting in, if you want to call it, staff training to ensure the consistency of approach when a case is reviewed is pivotal. And that's also tying into the corporate training unit and complaints units to ensure that someone in Sederunt, when they're reviewing that type of complaint, because on the generic format, is the same type of approach in the Sederunt, in the Lockerbie side. So it's very much about ensuring that we are consistent in our approach, and it's not being protect the council, not being taken one against other. It's balancing that. So it's very much a training process that we're mastering through just now to ensure that this level comes down to the agreed level of target.
Ivor?
So, when we're monitoring the complaints to highlight where service improvements are required, how as a committee do we know that you've monitored them and you've actually said, there's an issue, we've actually changed the way we work, and therefore we won't get those complaints in the future? And I realise it's timescales and things, but when it says your improvement action is to monitor the service and highlight areas of improvement, how do we know areas have been improved.
I suppose for members sitting here, it does look like we don't report to members that type of information. We do monitor within the respective service teams the type of complaints that are coming through and look at the trends and the profiles that are in there to take out the issues. It's maybe something that we can bring back to the committee, an exception report of the type of complaints that we are identifying and the type of action that has been put to that to alleviate that concern. So we'd be happy to do that for you.
I thought we actually used to get something like that at the end of the year report about complaints that came in and exceptional ones where, you know, we had. I think that would be very useful to have that report where we have complaints that come along and the actions that happen after that.
Yeah, I think that's quite good. Just even if it's on the one side of A4, just saying that we've noticed that there's been 4 complaints about this kind of service. This is a learning, you know, that we've taken out of it. Just because we should be striving always to improve our standards, and if we can do that, then we know it's actually happening. We can evidence it back if someone else comes and says to us, nothing ever happened about it, but we can say, well, actually, this has happened.
I think we've managed that for future.
No, through you, Chair, I think that would be welcome because obviously we do it service by service internally to the process. But again, as our committee here is the sort of the overarching board of that process, it'd be good to share that learning process with you. So happy to do that.
Marion?
Thanks, Chair. Could I just ask in Appendix 1, obviously the top 2, the sickness side of things, the targets hasn't been met. Can I just ask, would I be right in saying that, like the example, like a carer, they have to take additional time off, obviously because of the job that they do. Would that be contributing to the fact that maybe these markers aren't being met?
Yeah, it does. I mean, strategically, we have set targets right across the council at the 4%, and because people who are in home care, who are in canteens, have to take extra days off, that's actually calculated within the absences for that. It's one of the things we raised a couple of meetings ago about how do we, you know, look at that difference, because it does make a significant difference in the actual targets. But do you want to?
No, it's one that is on all the teams' agendas just now, is to try and reduce the amount of sickness, and we monitor this on a monthly basis. Our team have individual breakdowns so we can see the trends and the analysis and the type of absence that's there, and we're working with the corporate centre to review how best we can make inroads into reducing the absence. But you're absolutely right, and our chair has hit the nail on the head. There are elements of service that you must take mandatory periods off before you can return to your work, which obviously does have an impact on the numbers, because that absence, even while you're waiting for the X number of days before you can come back into a canteen, that does add to your tally. So you're right what you're saying.
Craig, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. First of all, in relation to the member inquiries, the value there is slightly below target, but I do appreciate it's an increased value from previous reports. But it's a question, Chair, that I've asked on this report in the past, and unfortunately as yet have not had an answer to. And it was a bit of a breakdown in the inquiries, because it would have a big effect on the actual percentage that we are dealing with in the required timescale. And it was the fact that when members put an inquiry in, and I appreciate that DGFirst get a significant amount of inquiries, especially through potholes, etc., etc. But the question was that when we do put an inquiry through, and it is in relation to potholes, we get an automated response, basically, to say, thank you, you know, it's dealt with, etc., etc., and blah. Now, if that is classed as a response to our inquiry within the delegated timescales, now I don't agree with that. All that is a response to say, basically, we've received your inquiry and it's gone into operational matters. So if that is classed in these figures, then I think that, you know, these figures would be altered drastically if the actual proper response as to when the problem is going to be fixed, et cetera, came through. So I've asked this in the past and not been able to have an answer to it yet, but I think that will have a significant effect on these figures. So I would like, and I don't expect we'll get it today, but I would like somebody to come back with me on that, because it's something that I've brought up through through the Chief Executive Services as well, because again, I don't think it would reflect the true figure that we have here. And secondly, on the improvement projects, which is on page 32 of 42, and it's in relation to the ICT development and the integration. Firstly, could we possibly have an update on the first part there as to whether the community fault facing has gone live, because it states in here it was going live the end of October. But my other point is on the mobile working. Now, I appreciate we're 33% through that project, and the completion date is not until March, which will come in at the end of year report. But we spend a lot of money on ICT development to help move forward, whether it's in the fault reporting as this is in relation to. And I do have concern, because we have meetings after meetings after meetings with the roads department, and we're told that all the time that this is coming forward, this is coming forward. It will dramatically help our fault reporting and for the public as well, and we will be able to relate back to that and see where that fault is within the line to be fixed, etc., etc. But it's been ongoing for such a long time now that I think we need a bit of a more detailed report into this, Chair, and I would ask that we could have that brought forward at a future committee.
It's one of the things I talked to Ronnie about before the meeting. I think I agree with you. The ICT side of things are spending an awful lot of money on things that aren't talking to each other. And when you look at lagging, not talking to EMES, for instance, maybe that could actually bring down the amount of time scale on issues being resolved. I think I'll be asking when we come to the recommendations if we can get a report on all of the ICT and where it actually is within the programme. And that to come forward to a future committee. Is that okay? Yeah, first part.
The first part, Robert, it is live now. My apologies, Chair. I will seek clarification, Councillor Peacock, and I'll get back to you and advise you, Colin. Obviously, I'm not personally aware whether it's live as yet. But going to the Chair's comment about ICT, I have to say I think it would be welcome bringing a report on the various sections of mobile working we have and how they are operating, from the building maintenance to what they have live, to what home care have live, what is coming on board with roads as well. So I think that would be a welcome piece of information to elect members as to the amount of ICT development and practical working there, particularly in relation to building services. It's very well advanced and live working and delivering huge strides forward in how the service is delivered, from the joiner starting at his home and going straight to his first job with all the information pushed down the line to him. So I think being able to present that to members, I think, will give a broader feel to how far we've came with the ICT.
Brian, did you want to come in now?
Thanks, Chair. Just on the return to work, again, I know that, or recollect that at our last meeting we did upgrade that aspect of those officers requiring training to carry out these return to work interviews. But it's more recently been brought to my attention that in some instances the return to work interview has been carried out in a van. I would not like to think that that's the case. It's not very professional and not necessarily the best way of managing that. So I would just ask for reassurances.
Any return to work interview should be done in a conducive and appropriate manner, and I can maybe chat with Councillor Collins to establish the one, we can find that out. Certainly some of the home care staff being out and about because of the number of staff that one manager may have, up to 100 within a team. Sometimes they may meet and discuss, because these people are on short-term contracts and out and about. But it would always be our case that we would try to deliver and do return to works interviews in an appropriate and manner and a location that best serves.
Stephen and Ivor.
Thank you, Chair. Well, firstly, just in resonance with Councillor Peacock's inquiry about I suppose, a further detail on the roadmap of ICT development, I'd welcome that, especially to get a better sense of how we know how far along the vision for ICT development we are, because, I mean, obviously, it just seems to be one thing after another, and, you know, I share fellow councillors' frustrations that sometimes things going through the lagging system and not getting any sense of closure, even though you do get an email saying that it's gone there. So I'd welcome that. And the other thing is, on another thing that was due until the end of October, it was the full analysis of data for the customer satisfaction programme. And I was just wondering if that detail is now available to be shared with the committee. But that's page 31 there of 42.
That data will be coming, Chair, and that will be reported through, because some of it's falling through as part of our quality management system and being analysed. So there will be an intention to bring the full detail on the customer satisfaction in the early course to members.
Ivor.
Thank you, Chair. Page 35, Health and Safety Report. We notice figures are better than last year as we go down through them all, apart from one where there's been one more. Can you explain what the graphs indicate? Because I may be reading it wrong, but you take September, number of incidents looks like about 2. Are the RIDDER figures in there as well? Because there's 4 RIDDER ones for September. Only 2 incidents being reported. Or are they separate figures? Second graph, number of RIDDER, other. Looks like to be 4 incidents there. Another question, is there a special incident that happens about August, September? Because there seems to be a wee spike there. You know, is there something that's done that...
I'll turn it slightly on its head, Chair, if I may. The summer ones tend to be the blips around some of the key activities that happen in those areas. It's the, dare I say, grass cutting, surface dressing, things like that, where you get the instance of back injuries, trips, falls, etc. So we are aware of this, and it's one of the sort of monitoring parameters that we're looking at to try and remove some of these issues out through the training. What's in front of you, the number of incidents in the RIDDERs, it's slightly confusing. That tells you at the top, but the one in the bottom is what is reported through as the RIDDERs. So there is some, and still some, need to do further development on this to give more clarity to members of what's presented here, because we tend to look more towards the RIDDERs as being key indicators, but your minor incidents can be your trips. You know, a lot of them are falling off curbs at the moment, believe it or not, is what we are getting coming through, is people slipping as they come off a curb or they are alighting from a vehicle. So that it's given a bit of confusion in this data. So we need to further develop this that gives more clarity to elected members and to ourselves as the management team of what the incidents are occurring and how that relates to the number of RIDDERs that have been reported through as well.
So that means the top one is minor incidents, the other one's RIDDERs. They're not, top one's not a gong of everything. Right, thank you.
I think also that I'm not sure whether they do it in council or not, but if there's road traffic collisions, for instance, within council, they may not come under RIDDER, but may come under road traffic, you know, statistics, and that sort of confuses council as well. So I think that would be useful to come forward with a bit more clarity on things health and safety report and things like that. Anybody else? Can we go to the recommendations then? We've reviewed the overall summary of performance for DGFirst out of Appendix 1. We've scrutinised the exception report in Appendix 2 and 3 and consider whether the actions proposed are adequate to improve performance in future monitoring of areas which have not met the target, and recognise areas of good practice, high performance where the target has been exceeded. And on the bottom of that, I recommend an update report on all the IT systems within DGFirst to come to a future meeting in 3 months. 3 months, okay? And then finally review the overall summary health and safety for 2013-14 DGFirst out of Appendix 4 and look to improve the information given to members for future report. Okay? Move on to item 7 then. This is overtime payments to refuse collection vehicle drivers. I think the report is self-explanatory. It concerns a situation which occurred last financial year. And once the matter was brought to the Director's attention, the matter was resolved for all 4 operational areas. Having discussed this with trade union colleagues, they were content in what had happened. They had several meetings with management to take actually through this with compensation payments, etc., etc. But Ronnie, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, Chair, I think the report there is self-explanatory.
George?
A couple of questions actually in the back of the report. I see it says in here that there are 2 operational areas, Nithsdale and Wigton, were the 2 areas which were the problem areas under the single status agreement. At the time that single status was brought in, was it not the case that there were operational vehicles coming out of both Stranraer and Wigton? So maybe that statement is not strictly correct, because to the best of my belief, the guys who were coming out of the Wigton depot had accepted the situation. It was the guys who were coming out of the Stranraer depot. I was just wanting clarification on that one first.
Chair, to the best of our knowledge, and obviously in conjunction with the trade unions, we reviewed that process. I'm unaware of that, Councillor Prentice, that the statement you've made there. But obviously, when this was brought to the attention, the Director requested we review this in conjunction with the trade unions to establish the basis, and that's what's done. But I certainly wasn't aware of that knowledge that you had.
You got a second point, George?
Second point is, I mean, we did ask for this report away back in January, February, and probably my own fault that it went totally out of my mind again until about October, when I brought it to Archie, and Archie said that he would see to it. So we now have the report. But I got a briefing report from the Director, which stated in there the reason that it hadn't come in January, February was because there were still ongoing issues which have not yet been resolved. I was just wondering if these have now been resolved.
Obviously, I can't speak.
I have an email to that effect, actually, from the Director.
In relation to the overtime payments for the RCV vehicles, to the best of my knowledge, all matters have been resolved, as the Chair said, in conclusion with the joint trade unions to their satisfaction.
Yeah, doesn't make good reading whereby an instruction that was given to implement part of the single status was either not received or ignored. Back in 2010 it was given, 2014 before it's resolved. That's 4 years. How didn't we pick it up in an audit? Is there any other instructions that were given with regard to single status that haven't been implemented across the service, whether it's street cleaning or burial grounds? I don't know. Is there other ones there that haven't been implemented across the area? And I would have expected if you, big chief gives you an order, sometimes you have to just tug the forelock and do that. Why didn't it happen?
Ronnie?
Through you, Chair. Completely understand the comments from Councillor Hislop. Obviously, when this was brought to the attention, we actioned into it, and this element was dealt with. We are doing a trawl of any other issues to ensure there are no vagaries from the implementation of single status, and we're working with our colleagues in HR to ensure that there isn't anything out there. Obviously, what was done here when this was brought to our attention, for whatever reason, we dealt with it, and we worked with both with the management and the unions to resolve it. And we are doing a trawl to ensure there are no other anomalies out there that have not been implemented.
Why wasn't it implemented? Just somebody decided, oh, that's an email for tomorrow, I'll get back to it. Was that, this is a direction from your hierarchy down. My understanding was you usually say, right, that needs to be done, that's done. Why, where was the break in the chain? Why didn't it happen?
I think in this case, obviously, there was some line managers who weren't doing their job. They are no longer with the council, and I think that's been resolved to the benefit of the council for the joint trade unions. In all cases, when you get things like single status, you'll always get anomalies. You'll never get it 100% right, because it affects terms and conditions, and negotiations are long and convoluted. I think in this case, however, the report was asked for, it's here. It has been resolved. I take on board that the review that's taking place within DGFirst to make sure that any other thing that's been missed is going to be done. I'm assured by that, but I just wanted to make sure one question on it, that this doesn't have effect on the overall budget for DGFirst.
No, Chair.
Okay, any others? Stephen?
Okay, sort of in a similar vein, but I was under the understanding that they would be getting a report back to this committee on the full implementation of single states in 5/7, and this just focuses purely on the refuse collection vehicle drivers. So, I mean, it's been touched on already, and you've mentioned that there's a trawl to find any other isolated instances of this. So it'd be good to know if we could get a fuller picture just once that information is to hand, so we can see. So, for example, do we know what the full overtime bill is for DGFirst? You know, what sort of scale are we talking about? Because this obviously clearly addressed the one to do with RCV drivers. And the second thing about that would be, given that this is a sort of failure to fully implement a policy that was agreed, or single states, as you say, in the governance assurance, why isn't it CMT included in that? That you'd have thought this would be something that would be monitored regularly to get a sort of a sense of how it was progressing or what the issues were and how to tackle it. So it's really just, again, maybe following in the back of what Councillor Hislop's touching on, why did this not happen, and is this not something we should be looking at CMT level, or is that not the process that's normally followed?
The concern I would have is, obviously there's operational matters and there's strategic matters within DGFirst. Operational matters should be dealt with by the management. This was something that was dealt with by the management. The report came forward on the request of the independence group. It's here in front of us. But Ronnie, if you want to answer Stephen's.
Through you, Chair. Obviously, the 5/7 process, that's something that it's an activity that's been developed as part of the budgetary proposals to see how we can further improve and enhance service provision by use of other methods of service delivery, utilizing 5/7 and other types of patterns of operation, and that will come forward as those get developed, and that's not strictly as part of the single status agreement of 2009. The process here, was obviously down to an issue whereby whatever instruction did not get down to the level of the supervisor or whatever was putting the process of timesheets, and that CMT involvement wouldn't go down as far as that. So we've certainly put into place processes to ensure that there is no future risk of this type of activity or issue happening.
Ivor?
Sir Dempster made a statement there that this had no budgetary effect on DGFirst budget. Did we get the return of the 50,881 plus the 4,085? Either, if we didn't, it had a budgetary effect in the fact that we spent that money when we shouldn't have done it.
There was agreement, and this comes back down to the operational side of things, agreement between the trade unions and the management of DGFirst to get that done within the overall budget of DGFirst. There's no effect in the overall budget, but certainly on this particular thing, there was an agreement made with the trade unions.
Do we not have an overspend in refuse collection?
We do, but overall, the budget is coming in. Are there any other members? George?
Chair, I still would like confirmation that the operatives in Wigtonshire were all receiving overtime payments, or was it just some and some who weren't? Because if that is the case, then I don't know how that came about, because that's one single area. How some of them got it and some of them didn't. I would like confirmation on that.
I'm just looking at 3.4 in this, George, and it says that only 3 drivers did not receive a payment as they had not driven in the previous 12 months. They're different guys. So they're not refuse collection vehicle drivers.
I'm presuming the people who are talked about in there were people who were claiming that they should have had money but didn't receive it because of various reasons.
But
they were not entitled to it. They were not entitled to it. I mean, I'm just wanting confirmation.
Ronnie will speak to you separately. My understanding is all the compensation payments have been made and agreed by the trade unions and the management. Ronnie will speak to you separately if you've got a specific issue.
That's not the question, Chair. I'm talking about purely about the operatives in Wigtonshire. The guys who are driving the lorries in Wigtonshire, did they all receive payments? Were they all getting overtime, or did they receive compensatory payments? Did some of them receive compensatory payments?
That's an individual issue with the employee and the employer at the end of the day. And I understand what you're saying, but that's what I'm saying. Ronnie will talk to you, and if there's a specific area where you're looking at, Ronnie will talk to you at the end of this meeting. Okay? Stephen?
Thank you. I think it might be helpful just, to preserve anonymity and get a sort of wider view to get a sense of what the total overtime bill is for DGFirst and what proportion of that overtime bill is as a result of those not maybe where single status has been fully implemented. What proportion of it is accounted for by non-implementation of single status, sorry.
We'll put that in the next finance report. Is that okay? Caroline?
I can give you a brief analysis. The overtime, including additional hours for DGFirst as a whole, is £1.5 million budget spent. The amount that we're talking about for refuse is a very small proportion of that, actually. Bear with me first. Sorry about this. The overtime bill for the whole year for the refuse collection is 100 and £110,000 budget for this year. And the actual spend was 123,000 last year. The difference being the additional payment and a few other things. Now, that overtime includes the overtime associated with the public holidays. Obviously, when people they work Saturdays and Sundays when they've got public holidays. So the majority of that is to do with that public, not to do with. So proportionally, quite.
Stephen?
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously this paper focuses exclusively on the refuse RCV drivers. So it's really just to get a sense of those other possible pockets where single status hasn't been fully implemented, which would account for part of that overtime as well. And I think that's really what, just to get the widest, sort of fullest picture possible.
We'll bring something forward, Stephen, at the next committee. Okay, anybody else? What are the recommendations? Members are asked to note the arrangements made to resolve inconsistent and overtime payments to refuse collection vehicle drivers following single status implementation, and we'll get a further report on the overtime payments in DGFirst at the next. Okay, moving on to the number 8, road maintenance review aids to movements. This report covers the last element of a programme of reviews agreed by this committee in April 2012. The report makes a number of recommendations for improved practice, and one specific recommendation to use prefabricated speed cushions for all new or replacement traffic calming measures. Robert Cowie is going to take us through this. Robert?
Okay, good afternoon, Chair. I'd just like to give you a brief overview of the report, if you don't mind. The Aids to Movement report is part of the review of roads maintenance operations, where previous reports covered road repairs, drainage, surface treatment, and footways. Aids to Movement is the term used to describe roads infrastructure assets which assist in the movement of the travelling public, and includes road signs, bollards, pedestrian barriers, road markings, etc. It is recognised that changes in the road network, such as towns being bypassed, and also changes to legislation, that some of these assets can be reduced. For instance, proposed changes in signing legislation will be beneficial in reducing sign clutter and improving the streetscape. With the development in technology, road assets could also be replaced with more economical and sustainable materials, assisting in reducing the maintenance burden and inconvenience to the travelling public. Within the region, there are numerous road humps and cushions constructed in bituminous materials, and these have proven difficult to maintain, as well as being awkward to construct and compact to the correct dimensions. By trying different materials, it has been found bolted down prefabricated rubber cushions provide quick and easy installation and minimise traffic disruption. They are more durable to the action of traffic and can be removed if the carriageway needs resurfaced and then replaced. Although initially more expensive, they provide better value in the long term and fits in well with the spend to save philosophy. With the new sign legislation being proposed in the near future, this is an opportune time to provide staff training to cover the changes and also to review our approach to the maintenance of road structure assets. Glad to take any questions.
Thanks, Robert. Members? Brian?
Thanks, Chair. Whilst I recognise that the cushions are one measure, I'm a bit concerned that we don't go over the top insofar as the installation of these cushions are concerned, and that we also consider other methods of traffic calming, whether it be priority build-outs on the roadways or whatever. I'm certainly not happy with the sleeping policeman, as we used to call them, the tarmac hump. And I wonder what, where Robert has said that they have proven problematic in a number of aspects, I wonder what the longer term thinking is with regard to those and or their removal. trying to avoid the obvious here in terms of the one outside my damn door.
And understand exactly where you're coming from, Brian. I mean, when you look at things, when you look at things like safer routes to school and all that, the capital project cost came in there, but the maintenance cost didn't come along with it, you know. So
Aye, but where you've got a 50-metre stretch of road before that's a no-through road, it makes absolutely no sense. So it's a nonsensical cost. It also happens to sit in a narrow street, and emergency vehicles, ambulances and so on, it presents difficulties for as well. The sooner I see that one removed, the better. But I'm wondering what the longer term thinking is in relation to removing these problematic Tarmacadam build-ups.
Robert?
This report is to do with the maintenance of speed cushions. I can't really comment on the planning of the implementation of road humps and road cushions.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. But we're not going to solely consider speed cushions in road traffic calming measures. There will also be other measures that we will consider as well. I would like reassurance on that, and not simply be looking at cushions only as a measure.
And this report just actually deals with the replacement of existing speed cushions, not the implementation, which comes through a statutory process, consultation, which we're not involved in the operational side. Sorry, I can't comment on that one.
Ronnie, do you want to come in on that one?
It's obviously, through you, Chair, it's obviously something that we work with our colleagues in planning and environment to ensure that there are alternative ways, whether it be lateral build-outs and the one, as the locals in my village say, can we have a chicane in the village that helps slow the traffic down? So I think this is one item of maintenance, but there's numerous other factors that have got to be considered at any time, councillor, to ensure that the appropriate option is picked for that locality. So I think between ourselves, planning environment, looking at any new implementations, it would be done with the appropriate the type for that locality.
Brian?
Thanks very much for that. And I'm just thinking of the number of Tarmacadam build-up humps that have been put in the road, and that they wouldn't automatically be replaced by cushions on the occasion that it might be determined that it's appropriate to remove that Tarmacadam build-up, and that some further considerations be made as to whether or not it's necessary or appropriate that the cushions replace those build-ups, or if there are other methods, if any, that need to be applied in a given circumstance.
That's one thing, and that's obviously it's about road maintenance as well, and making sure it's safe for people to go through road works, for instance, and paving works and that type of thing. Some of the issues I've seen over the weekend is that equipment, road safety equipment, is still left there, traffic lights, cones, when the work is complete days after. And for instance, we were in Glencapel last weekend, and the two sets of traffic lights were staying on red. I mean, is there a process which we can help either utilities or ourselves to make sure at the end of the work, at least to bring those traffic lights into the side of the road and face them if the work is complete and it's safe for the road to be used, that actually happens?
Again, Chair, yes, I think that the answer is as simple as that. We have to ensure and work with utilities to free up the roadways to allow the free movement of traffic. There are circumstances, I know, because and this relates to a bit of work that we've been doing on the trunk roads, where we literally had to leave the traffic lights on for a period of time to allow curing of concrete around manholes, and sometimes we need to do a little bit more in a proactive nature by leaving other signage up just to advise the reasons why they're there with no other activities going on. So it's something we'll look at. I don't know about the specific one in question down that you referred to, but yeah, there are at times other operational reasons that are perhaps not readily seen to the travelling public as to why that apparatus is there.
Any other members? Ivor?
Just with regard to road marking studs, it says here that you might be reducing the number of white lining required because of legislation. What sort of things are you thinking of? Because you know, like the arrows for going left, right, or straight on. I like them earlier in the road rather than just about the junction. Because by the time you get there, if there's a big queue in front of you, you've only got I'd rather, you know, I think if you've got your signs in place slightly earlier, it gives you time, if you are in the wrong lane, to get into the other one rather than people beeping the horn. They're like saying that.
Understanding that you've got to drive according to the conditions, Councillor Robert? Those signs earlier on the road.
I think the report's considering that towns that have been bypassed, we have still got double white lines through the villages and road studs, kind of thing. And instead of replacing light for light, taking them away and putting the central line in.
I think also there's a lot of areas within Dumfries and Galloway where double yellow lines are no longer required, for instance. So they'll be, I would imagine, getting refused and not being replaced, getting removed and not being replaced. I'm thinking of areas like the White Sands and all that when we talk about the improvements down there. Councillor Peacock?
Thank you, Chair. Sort of taken away from between Councillor Heslop and yourself as to part of my question, which was to do with the yellow lines actually on the roadside as well. And I was just wondering, because this is a maintenance operation, a maintenance budget that you have here, and it states earlier on in the report that it's £300,000 worth of that budget generally goes to the signage and the line markings. But that's for maintenance or replacement after works have been done on the carriageway itself. And so I just wondered, within that budget then, would it be for the likes of removal of yellow lines on the road? And I appreciate, again, it would have to go through the traffic order, etc. But would that fall within this budget, or would that be separate through EEI committee to push forward on something like that? And just on the back of it as well, Chair, with regard to signage and looking to declutter some of the signage, I, as particularly as a driver, particularly welcome that, because in certain instances, you're that busy looking at a directional sign to find out where you're going. You're not actually concentrating on your driving, and therefore, you know, there's possibilities of accidents. So if that's utilised, I think that will be a benefit to all road users.
Robert?
Yeah, just to answer the first part of the question there, they'll be funded through the maintenance budget, and it would only be dealt with when the lines are get to the stage that need replaced. So it wouldn't be going out doing proactive work. So it'll just be when
Great.
Thank you, Chair. So if there was a request from the police for lines to be removed, that would come through this budget, and you would look to have those lines removed. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was kind of on a similar point, and just also echoing Councillor Collins' view on whether or not, just because a speed bump was there before, it should necessarily be replaced without assessing whether or not the need is still there. I notice for the regulatory signs and the warning signs, as you say, it's when you're in the process of maintaining or carrying out maintenance work, that's what determines effectively if you review the traffic regulation order to see if they're still needed. And similarly, if police, you know, if there's another mechanism. But to be consistent, it might make sense to apply the same logic in 3.20. It says that speed cushions will be installed in all future traffic calming schemes, but it doesn't sort of explicitly say that that's pending an assessment of whether in fact they're still actually needed or not. So it's just really to clarify, it's not just a case of stick them there to replace the bituminous ones, but to actually assess whether they're still needed as well. So is that something that you can take away, or yeah?
Can I just add to that? Because obviously we've been building new schools around Dumfries and Galloway, and some of the older schools still have the safer route to schools issues on it, and I'm just wondering if that part of the maintenance can be to remove similar areas, because they will no longer be required where a new school has been built on an old route to an old school. Brian, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, just briefly, just on the back of what Craig was asking as well there, I was aware in the previous incarnation of the involvement and collaborative working that took place with the police in relation to these measures being considered. And I just wonder, under Police Scotland now, if that is still as was at a local level in terms of our considerations in the installation of any measures. Is there still that close relationship, local level and collaborative working with Police Scotland?
Yes, I've just recently had a police liaison meeting out at the West, News and Stewart. We all get together with sergeants, traffic police, community officers, and we go through these issues that may arise over the 6 months, or whatever it is, we have the meeting.
Anybody else? Move the recommendations in. We agree the proposed actions in taking forward the revised approach to the maintenance of aids to movements as detailed in paragraph 3.8 to 316 and 321, and agree to adopt the use of rubberised speed cushion future traffic calming schemes as described in paragraph 3.15 to 3.21, taking into consideration what was mentioned by Councillor Thompson earlier on with regards to the equipment there. Yeah. Thanks very much. I have no further business.